Section 1, Africa. Economics. Europeans introduced new crops, technologies, and cash economy. Built roads, railroads, and cities. Politics. Europeans denied educated African top jobs in colonial governments, healthcare, and education. Western doctors developed vaccines for yellow fever, smallpox, and helped reduce deaths from malaria. By the 1950s, in response to national demands, colonial rulers built more hospitals and schools. National borders. At independence, African nations inherited borders drawn by colonial power. Colonies included people from diverse ethnic groups with different conflicting interests. Impact of World War II. Sharpened the edges of nationalist movements. African troops returned to find discrimination a second-class citizenship. At home, those ex-soldiers became easy recruits for growing nationalist movements. The global setting. Britain and France, the largest imperialist powers, were faced with growing nationalist demands. Introduced political reforms that would lead to gradual independence. Oh my God, Mr. Courageous.
Keep going.
In 1947, after India won independence from Britain, African leaders grew impatient. Nationalist leaders. In the cities, the political parties published newspapers, held mass rallies, and mobilized support for independence. Ghana. First African nation to win freedom was the British colony of the Gold Coast. Through strikes, boycotts, Nkrumah tried to win concessions from Britain. Later, Nkrumah was imprisoned because he led to riots. 1957, Gold Coast won independence.
When Africa became free, many Africans felt the loyalty was their own ethnic group, not the government. African nations were plagued by ethnic and regional conflict. Wars broke out between tribes. In some parts of Africa, they were ran by military. Demands for change were coming from in and out of the continent, but the people wanted some say and participation. Some African nations relied heavily dependent on import. Some African countries had to make cash crops to export so they had more income. The farmers had to decide whether to make the crops for themselves or to export crops. Different parts of Africa would try and stop relief supplies from reaching each other. AIDS spread very rapidly across areas of Africa. Almost 30 million people in Africa were infected with the HIV virus that caused AIDS. Women took on huge roles for the family. They had to take full care. For example, in Rwanda, most people are Christian, but ethnic conflict led to mass killings even in the churches where people were taking refuge. In the 1970s, the oil boom helped Nigeria recover from war. Government spent money on development projects, set up industries, steel mill, and auto assembly. Rural people flooded into the areas hoping to share in the economic booms, but while cities grew, the government paid little heed to farmers. Military and civilian rule. During Nigeria's debt crisis, General Brahim Babangida, I don't know, BB, just say BB, imposed harsh economic reforms to restore economic stability. People democratically elected Babanginda's successor, Olusegun. He promised more roads, schools, and clinics for Nigeria's people. Dictatorship and war in Congo. Belgium was unprepared for self-government, and with few trained leaders, the new nation was in civil war. Advantages had many rich resources, including tropical forests and plantations. In 1965, Army General Mabudo seized power and imposed some kind of order, renamed the nation Zaire, being Big River.
Section 4.
Setting the scene, Mandela had become South Africa's first president. He spoke of new beginnings for Africa and need for unity, not of revenge for the losses suffered by black South Africans. Britain supported the need for majority rule, white, led by Ian Smith, who declared independence in 1964. As a response, nationalist groups waged guerrilla war to achieve a majority rule. Mugabe called for a one-party system to promote national unity and tolerate little opposition. In 1948, Afrikaner National Party won a majority whites-only parliament. Then they extended the existing system of racial segregation, creating what was known as apartheid, or the separation of races. In 1989, a new South African president, F.W. de Klerk, accepted the need for reform. He abandoned the apartheid. Years later, he freed Mandela. Mandela and de Klerk negotiated terms by which South Africa was moved to majority rule. White voters approved the reforms that would allow one person, one vote. In 1960, Southwest African People Organization had turned to, oh my god, I left it blank by accident. We just might as well stop the video. Wait, how long did it take that? Like, say